For as long as I could remember, owning my own home had been my biggest dream. Not just any house, my house. A place I could shape and mold to fit exactly what I wanted. A place where I didn't have to worry about landlords hiking up rent, or noisy neighbors banging around on the other side of a paper-thin wall. I worked my tail off for it. I clocked in overtime whenever I could, lived off the cheapest groceries, and skipped out on vacations and nights out. Every spare dollar went straight into my savings. I sacrificed sleep, comfort, and even relationships because I had one clear goal in mind: homeownership. My own piece of stability in this crazy world. And finally, after years of grinding, it happened. The stars aligned, my credit score was solid, my savings were just enough for a down payment, and the right house came onto the market at the perfect time. It wasn't a mansion, but to me, it was paradise, a beautiful 3-bedroom with a big backyard and a porch that practically begged for a rocking chair. It was nestled in a quiet neighborhood, just far enough from the city to have peace but close enough that I wouldn't feel isolated. The moment I walked through the front door, I knew. This was it. This was home. The buying process was grueling, but I had done my homework. I had all my documents ready, secured a solid loan, and put in an offer that was quickly accepted. The house was mine. The feeling of holding those keys in my hand for the first time? Indescribable. A mix of relief, pride, and sheer, unfiltered joy. The first thing I did was call my mom. Now, I should have known better. I really should have. But at the time, I was just too excited to think about what she might say or do. I wanted to share the moment with my family. "Mom, I got the house! I just picked up the keys!" I practically shouted into the phone, grinning ear to ear. There was a pause. And then, the words that should have been my first warning sign. "Oh, that's nice. But honey, are you sure this is the right decision?" I should have known. My mom had always been a bit difficult. She had this way of making everything about her, of twisting situations to suit her own beliefs. But in that moment, I was too high on my victory to notice the undercurrent in her voice. "Of course, I'm sure." I laughed. "Mom, I worked so hard for this. This is my dream." Another pause. And then a sigh. "Well, all right. I suppose we should celebrate. Why don't we have a little family get-together at the house? Your brother would love to see it." My brother, Jake. Now, Jake and I had never been close. He was the golden child, the one my mom had always coddled, always put first. While I had been working my butt off, saving every penny, he had been bouncing between jobs, living at home well into his 30s, and letting my mom handle most of his problems. Still, I wanted to believe that this moment could bring us together. So I agreed. Big mistake. That weekend, I invited my family over to see the house. I was buzzing with excitement, giving them the grand tour, showing off the little details that had made me fall in love with the place. My mom made a few passive-aggressive comments, something about how it was a bit small, or not in the best neighborhood. But I brushed it off. Nothing was going to ruin this for me. Jake, on the other hand, barely said a word. He just walked around with this unreadable expression, nodding occasionally, but mostly staring at everything like he was mentally rearranging furniture in his head. Again, I should have picked up on that. But I was too wrapped up in the joy of the moment to notice the warning signs. After they left, I sat on my new couch, looking around my new home, and felt at peace. Everything was perfect. For about a week. Then I got a letter in the mail. A letter that nearly made my heart stop. It was from the county recorder's office. Confused, I opened it, expecting it to be some kind of routine homeowner document. Instead, it was a notice confirming the recent deed transfer. A transfer that I hadn't made. A transfer that stated the house, my house, was now in my brother's name. I sat there, staring at the paper, feeling like the walls were closing in on me. My stomach dropped, my hands started to shake, and my breath came in short, panicked bursts. There had to be a mistake. But as I read further, I saw the signature at the bottom. My mother's. My own mother had somehow, transferred my house into my brother's name. And she hadn't even told me. I didn't know how, I didn't know why, but one thing was clear. I had just been stabbed in the back by the person who was supposed to have my best interests at heart. And I wasn't about to let it slide. I sat frozen, gripping the letter like it might burst into flames in my hands. My brain refused to process what I was seeing. There was no way, no possible way, this was real. But it was. I read the letter again, every line hammering home the reality of what had just happened. My house, the one I had worked years to afford, had been ripped out from under me without so much as a warning. And my mother was the one who had done it. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at that document, before something inside me snapped. My mother had always favored Jake, always bent over backward to make his life easier at the expense of mine. But this? This was a new level of betrayal. I grabbed my phone and called her. She picked up after a few rings, her voice carrying that usual air of self-importance. "Oh, sweetheart. I was just about to call you." My jaw clenched. "Mom, what the hell did you do?" A pause. Then a sigh, like I was the one being unreasonable. "Honey, I know you're upset, but you have to understand. Jake needed this more than you did." I almost dropped the phone. Needed it? More than me? I had worked my butt off for this house. Meanwhile, Jake had coasted through life with zero responsibility, always expecting someone else to clean up his messes. "I bought this house, Mom. Me. With my money, my time, my effort. How could you do this?" She huffed, like I was being dramatic. "Honey, you're doing well for yourself. You have a good job, you're responsible, and you'll be fine. But Jake? He's struggling. He's never had a real home. I did what was best for the family." I felt something inside me snap. My heart pounded as a white-hot fury settled deep in my chest. This wasn't just some minor slight or misunderstanding. This was theft. And I was about to make things very, very difficult for everyone involved. I wasn't just going to sit back and let this happen. I was going to take back what was mine, no matter what it took. My head spun as I tried to wrap my mind around the situation. The law, the process, the sheer audacity of it all. How had she even pulled this off? How did my name disappear from the deed? I scrambled to my filing cabinet and dug out my copies of the paperwork from when I purchased the house. Everything was in order. My name was right there. But now, according to the county, it was Jake's. I felt sick. My hands trembled as I clutched the papers. My signature had been forged. That was the only explanation. My mother must have forged my name on a deed transfer, probably convincing some notary that she had my permission. I wasn't just mad anymore. I was furious. I stormed out of my house, got into my car, and drove straight to my parents' place. My knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. Every second that passed only fueled the fire burning in my chest. When I arrived, I barely had to knock before my mother opened the door, her face wearing a mask of forced patience. As if she had been expecting me. "Now, honey, I know you're upset." I shoved the letter in her face. "Upset? Are you out of your mind? This is fraud, Mom. You stole my house. How the hell did you even do this?" She sighed, shaking her head. "You're blowing this out of proportion. It was just a simple document transfer, and really, sweetheart, you'll be fine. You always land on your feet." I could feel my pulse in my ears. "Did you forge my signature?" She pursed her lips but didn't answer. That was enough confirmation. I let out a bitter laugh. "So, let me get this straight. You illegally transferred my house to Jake because you decided he needed it more?" She crossed her arms. "Jake has had a hard time. He's never had a place of his own. You don't need such a big house all to yourself." It made sense. "It's not like I kicked you onto the street. You can always find another place." I stared at her in disbelief. She was speaking so casually, like this was some small family squabble and not full-blown real estate fraud. Then, from inside the house, I heard Jake's voice. "Mom, is that my key? I think I left it on the—" He stopped dead when he saw me standing there. That was it. That was the moment it really hit me. He was already living in my house. My house, the one I had worked years to afford, had been stolen out from under me, and my brother had just moved in like he belonged there. I turned back to my mother, shaking my head in disbelief. "You've ruined any chance of ever having a relationship with me. Both of you. She gasped, clutching her chest like I had wounded her. Don't be so dramatic. I didn't say another word. I turned on my heel and walked away. But I wasn't giving up. No. This wasn't over. I was going to take back what was mine, and when I did, either of them would see it coming. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table. No, Jake's kitchen table now, gripping my phone like it was a lifeline. My mind raced in circles, flipping between disbelief, rage, and a growing, simmering determination. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. My mother and Jake had stolen from me, literally stolen, and they thought I'd just accept it. Hell. No. I started doing research, scrolling through real estate laws, fraud cases, and any legal precedent I could find. It didn't take long to realize that what my mother had done wasn't just some casual family dispute. It was full-blown, prosecutable fraud. She had no legal right to transfer my house, and if she had forged my signature, which I was almost certain she had committed a felony. I needed a lawyer. And fast. The next morning, I called out of work and booked an appointment with the best real estate attorney I could find. When I explained the situation to him, he sat back in his chair, eyes widening slightly before shaking his head. "This is serious," he said. "If your signature was forged, this is not just a civil issue, it's criminal. We'll need to get a forensic analysis done on the deed transfer document. If it's proven that the signature isn't yours, we have a strong case for fraud, forgery, and even grand theft." Hearing it out loud like that, grand theft, made my blood boil. This wasn't just some family squabble. My mother had committed a crime against me. I handed over all my documents, my original deed, my bank statements proving I had paid for the house, and every bit of communication I had with my mother about the home purchase. The lawyer nodded approvingly. "You have a solid case. But first I need you to do something very important. Do not, under any circumstances, talk to your mother or brother about this until we've taken legal action. We don't want to give them time to cover their tracks." That was fine by me. I didn't want to talk to either of them anyway. The next few days were a blur of legal procedures. My lawyer got a forensic analyst to examine the signature on the transfer document, and surprise, surprise, it was a forgery. The handwriting didn't match mine, and when we dug into the notary records, we found another bombshell. The notary had been a friend of my mother's. That meant they had likely witnessed the fraudulent signature without me even being present. I had enough evidence to not only reverse the fraudulent transfer but to press charges. But I wasn't done yet. I wanted them to feel the consequences of what they had done. The day I filed the lawsuit, I also did something else. I called my mortgage company and explained the situation. Since the loan was still in my name, Jake hadn't been making any payments. He had just been living there like the entitled leech he was. I made sure the mortgage company knew that a fraudulent transfer had taken place, and that no payments had been authorized under Jake's name. The rep was very interested in this information, especially when I mentioned the ongoing legal action. That meant foreclosure proceedings would be on the table soon, on Jake's newly acquired house. I smirked at the thought. My mother had tried to gift him my home, but in a matter of weeks, he'd be homeless instead. Then, for the final piece of my plan, I reached out to a close family friend, one who wasn't under my mother's manipulative influence. I told them everything. It didn't take long for the rest of the family to catch wind of what had happened. And, as I expected, the reactions were mixed. Some of my aunts and uncles were horrified, siding with me immediately. Others, the ones who had always bought into my mother's "Jake needs extra help" nonsense, tried to justify her actions. But I didn't care what they thought. I wasn't doing this for family approval. I was doing this to take back what was mine. The lawsuit was officially underway. The fraud was being investigated. Jake's time in my house was ticking down. And my mother? She had no idea what was coming. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. It was almost amusing how quiet things were before the chaos hit. I had been waiting for it, expecting it. My mother and Jake had no clue that I had filed a lawsuit, that the mortgage company was gearing up for a foreclosure, or that I had started unraveling their fraudulent little scheme. They were sitting in my house, thinking they had won, completely unaware that their world was about to collapse. Then the storm hit. It started with my mother calling me out of nowhere, her tone sugary sweet. "Honey," she cooed, "why haven't you been answering my calls? We need to talk." I could barely suppress my smirk. "Oh, we'll talk soon enough." I let it go to voicemail. She called again. Then again. Then Jake called. Then my father, who had been largely absent from this mess, texted me saying, "Your mother is panicking. What's going on?" That told me everything I needed to know. They had received the legal notice. By the time I checked my messages, my mother had left an entire novel of voicemails, cycling between outrage, manipulation, and pathetic pleas. "This is family business. You didn't have to get lawyers involved. How could you do this to Jake? You have so much, and he has so little. You are going to regret this. Do you really want to tear the family apart over a house?" Oh, the irony. I was the one tearing the family apart. I was the villain? Not the woman who stole my house and handed it to her golden child? I finally decided to call her back, not out of guilt, but because I wanted to hear the moment she realized she had lost. The second she answered, she went straight for guilt tripping. "I don't understand why you're doing this. You have always been so responsible, so level-headed. This is not how we solve family problems." "Family problems?" I repeated, unable to keep the venom out of my voice. "You mean the problem where you stole my house? That family problem?" She scoffed. "Oh, don't be dramatic. I did what was best for everyone. Jake is a grown man who has never worked for anything in his life." I cut her off. "And now, thanks to you, he's about to lose the house you illegally transferred to him. Did you really think I wouldn't fight back?" There was silence on the other end. That was my confirmation. She hadn't expected this. She thought I'd roll over, that I'd just accept it because that's what I had done my whole life. Not this time. "This is your final warning, Mom," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You and Jake need to get out of my house before the legal process forces you out. If you fight this, it will get worse for you. If you want to avoid criminal charges, you will return what you stole." Her voice cracked. "Criminal charges?" "Yes," I said flatly. "Forgery. Fraud. Grand theft. It's all on the table." The line was quiet for so long that I thought she had hung up. But then she let out a small, disbelieving laugh. "You're serious? Dead serious?" She inhaled sharply, then exhaled, her tone shifting into something colder. "You don't know what you've done." "Actually," I said, smiling to myself, "I know exactly what I've done." And with that I hung up. Over the next few days, things escalated. My mother and Jake refused to leave the house. They tried to stall the legal process, but it was no use. The evidence was overwhelming. The mortgage company was already preparing to reclaim the home, and my lawsuit was gaining traction. Jake, who had been so smug and comfortable before, started to crack under the pressure. He called me once, his voice thick with stress. "Dude, you're really gonna do this? Over a house?" I laughed outright. "Over a house? You mean my house? The one I bought? The one Mom stole for you?" "She just wanted to help me," he muttered, but there was no conviction in his voice. He knew he was losing. "Then maybe she should have helped you find a job instead of stealing from her own son." I snapped. "You have one chance, Jake. Leave before the sheriff makes you." More silence. Then he hung up. The final blow came a week later. The mortgage company moved to reclaim the property due to missed payments, because, of course, Jake hadn't paid a dime. He had assumed I would just keep covering it, even after they had stolen the house from me. Now, he was getting evicted. And to make matters worse for them, my lawsuit was progressing. The court had found clear evidence of fraud, and my lawyer had filed for criminal charges against my mother. She could actually face jail time for this. I got a final, desperate call from her. She was in tears now, her usual arrogance shattered. "Please," she begged. "Don't do this. I didn't mean to hurt you. Jake needed help. He's my son, too. I love you both." I exhaled slowly. "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you screwed me over." "Please," she whispered. I hesitated, not because I felt sorry for her, but because I realized something in that moment. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she got caught. So I steeled myself and said the words she never expected to hear from me. "You're dead to me." And then I blocked her number. She had made her choice. And I had made mine. The day the eviction notice was officially posted on the front door of my house, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction. Jake had been served. He had barely 2 weeks left before the sheriff would come knocking, and there was nothing he or my mother could do about it. I had won. But the battle wasn't quite over yet. For days, Jake and my mother scrambled, trying to delay the inevitable. My mother called every lawyer she could find, but none of them could undo what she had done. The evidence was too solid. She had committed fraud, plain and simple, and the courts didn't take kindly to people forging legal documents. The reality of the situation finally hit her when she received a court summons for the fraud case. She had been officially charged, and suddenly, all her arrogant bravado was gone. I heard through the family grapevine that she was panicking. "I can't go to jail. I was just helping my son." But the law didn't care about her excuses. She had stolen from her own child, and now she was paying the price. Meanwhile, Jake was in full meltdown mode. He had been freeloading his entire life, bouncing between my mother's house, various girlfriends' apartments, and now my home. But now, with nowhere left to run, he had to face the harshest reality of all. He was about to be homeless. I got a text from an unknown number one night. "I know you're mad. But can we talk? Please?" I stared at it for a long time. It had to be Jake. I didn't reply. I had nothing left to say to him. The real cherry on top, though, was what happened next. The house, which I had maintained meticulously, had started to fall apart under Jake's care. He hadn't done a single bit of upkeep. The plumbing was shot, the backyard had turned into a jungle, and my once beautiful hardwood floors were covered in scratches and stains. I found this out when the mortgage company did an inspection before finalizing the foreclosure. The inspector called me personally, his voice laced with sympathy. "Yeah, it's not good," he said. "Whoever's been living there really let the place go." I clenched my jaw but forced myself to remain calm. It didn't matter. Once I got it back, I'd fix it. The important thing was that Jake would soon be gone. The final eviction day came faster than I expected. Jake and my mother had no choice but to pack up and leave. My aunt, one of the few relatives still speaking to me, later told me that Jake had thrown a massive tantrum while packing. He blamed me for his downfall, completely ignoring the fact that he had brought this on himself. Meanwhile, my mother, once so smug and self-righteous, was a shell of her former self. Facing criminal charges and total disgrace within the family, she had finally realized that I wasn't the son she could control anymore. And I never would be again. I showed up at the house the moment it was legally back under my name. Standing in front of my home again, knowing I had reclaimed what was rightfully mine, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about a house. It was about respect. About standing up for myself after years of being treated like an afterthought. I stepped inside. It smelled different, stale and unkempt, but it was mine again. And I was never letting anyone take it from me ever again. The battle was over. But the rebuilding was just beginning. The fallout from everything that had happened hit like a slow-moving storm, tearing apart everything in its path. My mother, once so sure of her position as the family matriarch, was now crumbling under the weight of her own choices. The legal trouble, the disgrace, the utter collapse of her reputation, it was all too much for her to bear. And Jake? Well, he was lost without his usual safety net. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about the way my family had treated me for years, like I was just supposed to sit back and accept being the responsible one, while my mother and brother did whatever they wanted without consequence. But I had learned a hard lesson. Sometimes, you have to fight for what's rightfully yours. And in this case, that meant standing up for myself, no matter the cost. My mother tried, of course, to apologize. At first, it was just subtle little gestures, text messages here and there, emails sent in the middle of the night. She wanted me to know she was sorry, that she had made a mistake. But I wasn't fooled. I knew this wasn't about me. It was about her. It was about saving her own skin. I didn't respond. The more I ignored her, the more desperate her attempts became. She reached out to distant family members, trying to gain their sympathy, trying to make herself out to be the victim in this situation. But no one was buying it, not anymore. Not after everything had come to light. Jake, on the other hand, had completely shut down. He moved into a small apartment, if you could even call it that, about a month after the eviction. From what I gathered, he barely scraped by. No job, no money, no real stability. I wasn't surprised. He had never had to work for anything in his life. Everything had always been handed to him, and now, he had to face the consequences of his own laziness. I would hear from people occasionally, cousins, old family friends, who would pass along bits and pieces of the latest gossip. My mom had tried to start a GoFundMe to help with her legal fees. She had even asked my aunt if she could borrow money to pay her lawyer. It was pathetic, but it wasn't my problem anymore. I was done. One day, I got a call from my mom. I knew it was coming, but I had no interest in hearing her excuses. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice shaky. I didn't respond at first. I didn't owe her anything. But I let her talk anyway. She begged, as she always did, for forgiveness. She said she didn't mean for things to get this bad. She even tried to guilt-trip me by saying that family was all we had left. But the truth was, I had already given up on her a long time ago. She had crossed a line I couldn't unsee, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me into feeling sorry for her. "I can't fix this, Mom," I finally said. "You had your chance to make things right, and you chose Jake. You chose to steal from me. And now I'm done." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, but she didn't say anything. Finally, she hung up. That was the last time I heard from her. It wasn't easy at first. I didn't feel victorious. I felt a kind of empty satisfaction. Reclaiming my house, reclaiming my life, had come at a steep price. I'd lost the only family I had left. My relationship with my mother, the woman who had raised me, was over. And Jake? He wasn't even a distant memory. But for the first time in my life, I didn't care. I had learned something important through all of this. I wasn't just some background character in my family's story. I wasn't a doormat to be walked on whenever it suited them. I was my own person, and if I had to fight for my respect, then so be it. In the end, I stood tall. I had my house. I had my freedom. And most importantly, I had learned how to stand up for myself. I'm not sure where life will take me next, but one thing is for sure, I'm not going to let anyone take anything from me again. The dust had settled, but the scars of everything that had happened still lingered. Life was moving forward, but I couldn't help but look back on everything that led me here. Back to my house, back to a life I had fought for tooth and nail. I had been naive for a long time. I had let my mother's manipulation and Jake's endless entitlement shape the way I saw myself. For years I had put their needs above my own, done everything I could to be the good son, the responsible one. But now I was done. I was done being the one who picked up the pieces. Done being the one who kept forgiving, who kept giving. I had finally learned to put myself first. The house was mine again. It was more than just a building, it was a symbol of my independence. It was proof that I didn't need to rely on anyone else to make my dreams a reality. And perhaps more importantly, it was a symbol of how much I had grown. But the cost of that growth had been steep. My relationship with my mother, well, that was over. I hadn't expected it to end like this, but I had no illusions anymore. She had chosen her son over me. She had decided that Jake deserved everything, and I was left to pick up the broken pieces of my life. When she first started reaching out, I had tried to entertain the idea of reconciliation. Part of me felt guilty, maybe I had been too harsh. But the truth was, her actions had been unforgivable. There was no coming back from what she had done. I had spent too many years as a secondary character in her life, and I wasn't going to go back to that role. Jake, too, was a lost cause. He wasn't a kid anymore. He was a grown man who had made his bed and now had to lie in it. He would never learn responsibility unless he was forced to. I wasn't going to carry him anymore. But even as I made peace with the fact that my family was no longer a part of my life, I couldn't ignore the small part of me that still ached at the loss. No matter how many times I told myself I was better off without them, The truth was I had always wanted their love and approval. I had always wanted to matter to them. That's something you never fully let go of, no matter how old you get. You can cut ties, you can walk away, but a part of you always hopes for some kind of reconciliation, even if you know it's impossible. I had moved on in every way that mattered. I had fixed up the house, and I was building a future that didn't depend on anyone else's validation. I had the career I wanted, and I had learned how to value myself in ways I never had before. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. The most important lesson I took from all of this wasn't just that I could fight for what I deserved, it was that I didn't need to wait for anyone's permission to do it. I was capable of taking control of my life, of standing up for myself, and of finally saying, "No more." I was free. And as I looked out over my house, my home, I realized that freedom was worth more than anything they could ever take from me.